All right, we're going to pick back up with that. So what I did here was to create a nice clean cut, pulling the X-Acto blade towards me. I'm not adding a ton of pressure, just enough to cut. I can always lift up my foam and just bend it slightly to see if it has cut and cut all the way through. In this case, it has not. So I'm going to give that cut just one more pass, and then I should be through the foam core. There we go. You can see it release there. Now, once I have some of that excess removed, then I'm going to need to work my way through my shapes. Again, I want to cut with trying to remove the excess scrap, and there should be very small amounts of scrap as well. But I want to create nice clean cuts. So in an area like this, where I have a shape that starts, I'm just going to gently press that X-Acto into that area and start to follow my lines and be getting that cutting practice. Now, instead of trying to follow my shape, especially this one that has lots of curves, okay, since that material is nice and rigid, and since the X-Acto is rigid as well, I'm going to drag all the way out to the edge. I'm going to make sure that's cut through. And then eventually I'm going to turn my foam. And then when I go back into that cut, now I can remove that little corner that was created. Okay, that's tiny scrap that I can get rid of. And then I can begin to safely work my way around some of those curves. In fact, you might find it easier if you have a shape similar to what I have here to start in at part of the curve. And then once I get around the curve, maybe about halfway, then I'm just going to drag all the way out. And when I do that a few times, okay, I'm eventually going to chunk off the pieces of foam core that are unneeded. Okay, and I'll have nice clean cutouts of the shapes that I would like. All right, so your curves are going to be your hardest thing to cut. And like I said, you just want to be aware of where your fingers are. And you get the hang of cutting out. As you do this safely, since your shapes are so close together, sometimes one cut will actually lead to two edges, which is what I'm approaching here. And once I remove that, you'll see that I'll have that big open area, which once I continue to cut that circle out, that will allow that edge to already be formed. So curves are going to be your hardest, and you just need to kind of take your time rotating the foam core, maybe even just cutting out to an edge until eventually you have some pieces that are extracted out of the excess. And then in this case, I just have this one last corner to work at cutting off. And cutting with the X-Acto blades is a very sort of fluid movement. You want to watch that you don't go in and kind of like saw or just work at piercing through it. That creates for a really jagged edge. And your goal is to create nice smooth cuts. So you can take notice here of how foam core is cut on mine. If you would happen to have any part that is a little bit on the jagged side, you can always hold it down, go back in with your X-Acto blade, and with a very precise and fluid cut, you normally can cut off some of those excess that don't look that great on the first try. Right? So your goal, once we work through our mock-up on Wednesday, is to start tracing and cutting out in foam core. Again, always making sure that you know where your hands are, where your fingers are. You never want to cut directly towards your fingers or your thumb. Also, you don't want to cut directly towards your body. And always be sure that you're working on a mat, taking your time when you're working with the X-Acto blade, and making it sort of a fluid motion, a fluid cut, cutting out to the outer edge when you can in order to free up your spaces. Once you are finished with your X-Acto blade, or if you need to get up and move away from your table at any point, you always want to take the cap, make sure that the cap and the X-Acto blade are lined up, and then be sure to put the cap back on. And if it would be at the end of class, you would return this X-Acto blade to me. If it is during class and you're getting up to grab some other material, or maybe going to the bathroom, just make sure that the lid is on before you get up and move away from your table. So this will again serve as your demo, safety demo. So you should be ready within the next few days to start working into creating and then cutting your foam core pieces.